The city lights blurred through her tear-filled eyes. Sophia clutched her swollen belly, the cheap fabric of her rented gown, a stark contrast to the glittering diamonds adorning the woman across the room. The woman wearing her dress. Her husband, Marcus, the man who'd sworn to cherish her, stood beside this stranger, his laughter echoing her deepest betrayal. Tonight was supposed to be a reminder of their love, but at the Ritz-Carlton's opulent gala, Sophia discovered it was a perfectly staged lie. What happens when a pregnant wife uncovers a devastating secret in the most public way possible? Stay tuned. The invitation had arrived 3 weeks ago, thick cream cardstock, embossed with gold lettering, the annual Starlight Children's Foundation Gala at the Ritz-Carlton. Sophia had felt a flutter of something akin to hope. It had been months, perhaps even a year, since Marcus Thorne, her husband, had suggested a proper evening out. Their 5th wedding anniversary had passed, with a perfunctory dinner at a restaurant he frequented for business lunches, his phone a constant unwelcome guest at their table. "You should get something spectacular," Marcus had said, barely looking up from his tablet when she'd shown him the invitation. "Something that befits Mrs. Marcus Thorne." He'd smiled then, a flash of the charm that had once made her heart race, now so rare it felt like a collector's item. "Don't worry about the cost. Get the best." Sophia, 6 months pregnant with their first child, a child she'd yearned for, and Marcus had eventually agreed to, had clung to those words. Maybe this was a turning point. Maybe the baby was softening him, reminding him of the life they were supposed to be building, not just the empire he was so fiercely protective of. The best way, Desi, however, was a complicated concept when the joint account she theoretically had access to was monitored and frequently questioned by Marcus's fiercely efficient personal assistant, Chloe. Every significant expenditure required pre-approval, a subtle but constant reminder of her dependent status. Marcus called it fiscal responsibility. Sophia called it a gilded cage. She'd spent days browse online catalogs from designers whose names were whispered with reverence in the society pages. She'd even bookmarked a stunning midnight blue Valentino gown, an empire-wasted dream that would flow beautifully over her burgeoning bump. It was elegant, understated, yet undeniably luxurious. She'd shown it to Marcus one evening, her voice tentative. "It's beautiful, Sophia. Perfect," he'd murmured, kissing her forehead before his phone buzzed and he was lost to her again, pacing the length of their penthouse apartment, barking instructions about mergers and acquisitions. He'd told her to handle it to get the dress. But when Sophia had tentatively mentioned the Valentino to Chloe, providing the style number and the boutique, the response had been a cool, "Mr. Thorne has already made arrangements for your gown for the Starlight Gala, Mrs. Thorne. He said he wanted it to be a surprise. He has impeccable taste, as you know." A surprise. Sophia had felt a pang of disappointment, then a wave of guilt for her cynicism. Marcus was thoughtful in his own way when he chose to be. Perhaps he'd seen her looking at it, or something similar, and wanted the gesture to be entirely his. She imagined him calling the boutique, arranging the purchase, picturing her in it. The thought warmed her. The days leading up to the gala, however, were filled with a familiar tension. Marcus was more absent than usual, his nights late, his mood preoccupied. "Big deal pending," he'd offered as a blanket explanation. "This gala is important for networking. Lots of key players will be there." He hadn't mentioned the dress again. Sophia had assumed it would arrive beautifully packaged any day, 2 days before the gala panic began to set in. No dress had materialized. She'd hesitantly broached the subject with Marcus. "The dress Darling, Chloe said, "You were handling it." He'd looked up, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Annoyance? Or had she imagined it? "Right, the dress. Yes, it's been handled. Don't you worry your pretty little head about it." He'd then smoothly changed the subject, asking about her latest obstetrician appointment. The "don't you worry your pretty little head" was a classic Marcus dismissal one that always made her feel small and foolish. The next day, the day before the gala, with still no sign of the mythical surprise gown, Sophia knew. He'd forgotten. Or worse, he'd never intended to get it in the first place. Chloe's comment about his impeccable taste now sounded like a practiced deflection. The humiliation was a cold knot in her stomach. To be the wife of Marcus Thorne, arriving at one of the city's premier social events in what an old gown that no longer fit her pregnant figure, the thought was unbearable. Marcus cared deeply about appearances, about the projection of success and flawless unity. Her showing up inappropriately dressed would reflect badly on him. That she knew was the only leverage she had. With a heavy heart and dwindling options, Sophia had done something she hadn't done since her struggling college days. She'd researched high-end dress rental services. The choices for maternity formal wear were limited, but she found a small, discreet boutique called Borrowed Elegance, run by a kind-faced woman named Mrs. Albright. The dress she selected was a deep emerald green, a soft flowing chiffon that, while not Valentino, was respectable and flattered her changing shape. It was, however, undeniably a rental. The subtle signs were there, if you knew where to look. A slight weariness to the fabric, an almost imperceptible perfume of previous wearers, no matter how well it was cleaned. Mrs. Albright had been sympathetic, sensing Sophia's quiet distress without prying. "You look lovely, dear. The color brings out your eyes." As she paid the rental fee, a significant sum for her pulled from the small personal savings account her mother had left her, Sophia felt a profound sense of loneliness. Here she was pregnant, wife of a multi-millionaire, secretly renting a dress to maintain the facade of a life that felt increasingly hollow. The evening of the gala arrived with a cold, drizzling rain that mirrored Sophia's mood. Marcus was as usual running late. He'd called to say he'd meet her at the Ritz-Carlton, claiming a last-minute emergency board meeting that couldn't be avoided. "You go ahead. Make an entrance. I'll be there as soon as I can," he'd said, his voice rushed. Sophia knew the routine. He probably just didn't want to be seen arriving with his heavily pregnant wife, preferring to make his own suave entrance unencumbered. Or perhaps the thought whispered venomously he was already with someone else. She pushed the ugly suspicion away. Tonight she would try. For the baby, for the dwindling embers of what they once had. Her reflection in the full-length mirror was a stranger. The emerald green dress was elegant enough. Her hair, which she'd painstakingly styled herself, was swept up, and a pair of diamond earrings, a gift from Marcus from their first anniversary, one of the few pieces of genuine jewelry she wore regularly, glittered at her ears. But her eyes held a sadness that no amount of makeup could conceal. Her swollen belly was a prominent curve, a constant reminder of the new life she carried and the uncertain future it faced. Taking a deep breath, Sophia picked up her clutch, also a rental, and walked out of their opulent empty apartment. The doorman, accustomed to her comings and goings, hailed her a cab. Not a limousine, not the chauffeured Bentley Marcus usually insisted upon for such events. Just a regular city cab, its meter ticking away like a countdown to an inevitable disappointment. The irony wasn't lost on her. Mrs. Marcus Thorne arriving at the Ritz-Carlton in a taxi wearing a borrowed dress to meet a husband who probably wouldn't even notice what she was wearing as long as it wasn't an embarrassment. The cab pulled up to the grand entrance of the Ritz-Carlton. Liveried valets rushed forward, their polite efficiency a stark contrast to Sophia's inner turmoil. The rain had momentarily stopped, but the air was damp and cool, carrying the scent of expensive perfume and wet asphalt. As she stepped out, the chiffon of her rented dress billowed slightly in the breeze, and for a moment, under the warm glow of the hotel's marquee, she felt a flicker of defiance. She was here. She was present. She wouldn't let Marcus or her own anxieties completely overshadow the evening. The lobby was a symphony of hushed luxury, marble floors gleaming under crystal chandeliers, elaborate floral arrangements perfuming the air, and the low murmur of sophisticated conversations. The Starlight Children's Foundation Gala was clearly a major event. Men in impeccably tailored tuxedos and women in a kaleidoscope of designer gowns drifted towards the ballroom, their laughter like wind chimes. Sophia handed her wrap to a cloakroom attendant, her movements careful. She felt a familiar wave of self-consciousness. These people, Marcus's people, exuded an effortless confidence that came with generations of wealth and privilege, or at the very least, the successful illusion of it. Her own background, though comfortable, was a world away from this rarefied atmosphere. As she walked towards the ballroom entrance, she scanned the crowd for Marcus, a knot of apprehension tightening in her chest. He wasn't there. Or if he was already schmoozing working the room, as he called it. "Sophia, darling." A voice sharp and precise as a stiletto heel cut through the ambient noise. Sophia turned to see Patricia Ainsworth, a woman whose age was a closely guarded secret, but whose social influence was undeniable. Patricia was a committee member for the Starlight Foundation and considered herself a kingmaker or queenmaker in their social circle. Her eyes, shrewd and observant, swept over Sophia from head to toe, lingering for a fraction of a second too long on the rented emerald dress. "Patricia, lovely to see you," Sophia managed, forcing a smile. "You look stunning." Patricia was draped in a crimson sequined number that probably cost more than Sophia's annual pre-Marcus salary. "Thank you, dear. And you? How far along are you now? You're simply glowing." Patricia's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Marcus not with you. He's usually so prompt for these things. Important for business, you know. He had a last-minute meeting. He'll be here shortly." Sophia replied, the practiced excuse rolling off her tongue. She wondered if anyone ever truly believed these last-minute emergencies. "Ah, of course. The burdens of a captain of industry," Patricia said, patting Sophia's arm with a perfectly manicured hand. "Well, do try to enjoy yourself, dear. The canapés are divine." With another searching glance, Patricia swept away, presumably to dissect Sophia's appearance and marital status with her next social acquaintance. Sophia took a flute of sparkling water from a passing waiter, the crystal cool against her palm. The ballroom was breathtaking, a sea of round tables, draped in white linen, adorned with towering floral centerpieces and flickering candlelight. A jazz ensemble played softly on a raised dais. It was a scene of perfect, curated elegance, and yet Sophia felt an overwhelming sense of alienation. She found an unoccupied chair near the edge of the room, a vantage point from which she could observe without being too conspicuous. She saw a few familiar faces, business associates of Marcus, their equally glossy wives, but no one she felt comfortable approaching on her own. Her gaze kept darting towards the entrance, hoping to see Marcus stride in his familiar, confident presence, a temporary anchor in this sea of strangers. Time stretched. The ballroom-filled conversations grew louder, and the clinking of glasses became a constant soundtrack. Sophia sipped her water, trying to appear serene, as if she were simply waiting patiently for her husband, perfectly at ease. Inside, her stomach churned. The baby gave a little kick, as if sensing her distress. She placed a hand protectively over her bump, whispering, "It's okay, little one. We're okay." Where was he even for Marcus? This was late. Had he forgotten entirely? Was he going to stand her up at one of the most high-profile events of the year? The thought sent a fresh wave of humiliation washing over her. Then she saw him. Marcus Thorne entered the ballroom, not with a rushed apology or a harried look from a delayed meeting, but with the relaxed, commanding air of a man entirely in his element. He was laughing, his head tilted towards his companion, a strikingly beautiful woman Sophia had never seen before. The woman was tall and slender, with a cascade of auburn hair that seemed to catch the light like fire. She was animated, her hand resting lightly on Marcus's arm as she spoke, her smile dazzling. And she was wearing a dress that made Sophia's heart stop. It was midnight blue, empire waisted, a flowing dream of chiffon and silk. It was the Valentino. The dress Sophia had bookmarked, the dress Marcus had said was perfect for her, the dress he was supposed to have handled as a surprise. Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. The crystal flute in her hand trembled. It couldn't be. It was a coincidence. There were many midnight blue dresses in the world. But as Marcus guided the woman further into the room, as they passed under a bright chandelier, Sophia saw the distinctive delicate beading along the neckline, the subtle shimmer of the fabric she had zoomed in on countless times on her laptop screen. There was no mistake. It was the exact Valentino gown. The one he had presumably purchased not for his pregnant wife, but for this stunning stranger. The woman beside Marcus Isabel Moreau, as Sophia would soon learn, her name turned slightly, giving Sophia a clearer view. Isabel's figure was runway perfect, the dress clinging and flowing in all the right places, unmarred by the beautiful inconvenience of a baby bump. She looked like she had stepped out of the pages of Vogue. And Marcus, her husband, was looking at Isabel with an expression Sophia hadn't seen directed at her in years. A mixture of admiration, amusement, and an undeniable possessive pride. He was showing her off. The air in Sophia's lungs seemed to solidify. The rented emerald green dress, which had felt merely adequate before, now felt like a costume of shame. The weight of the public humiliation, the sheer brazen cruelty of the act pressed down on her, threatening to suffocate. He hadn't just forgotten her dress. He had actively chosen to bestow her chosen dress, the one he knew she loved, upon another woman. And he had brought that woman here to this very gala where he knew Sophia would be. This wasn't an oversight. This was a statement, a deliberate, public, and devastatingly cruel one. The world tilted. The soft jazz music in the background seemed to warp and distort. The glittering chandeliers swam before Sophia's eyes, and the murmur of conversations became a dull, oppressive roar. For a moment, she thought she might faint. Her hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp that threatened to escape. It was the Valentino. There was absolutely no doubt. The deep sapphire hue that mimicked a twilight sky, the delicate scatter of crystals like distant stars across the bodice, the elegant sweep of the empire waist she had thought would be so perfect for her changing body. Now it adorned another woman, a woman who was currently laughing, her head thrown back, as Marcus leaned in to whisper something in her ear. They looked like a power couple, radiant and perfectly matched. And Sophia was the forgotten wife, relegated to the shadows in a rented dress, a silent testament to her husband's casual cruelty. Her gaze was locked on them, a horrifying tableau of betrayal. Marcus hadn't even scanned the room for her. He was completely absorbed in his companion Isabel Moreau, whose name seemed to whisper through the air. From the snippets of conversation, Sophia could now almost hear from nearby tables as people noticed the late grand entrance of Marcus Thorne and his dazzling date. The baby kicked again, a sharp, insistent reminder of the life within her, a life Marcus was supposed to cherish and protect. A cold fury began to pierce through the initial shock and pain. How could he? How dare he? This wasn't just about a dress. It was about respect, about loyalty, about the vows they had taken. It was about the child they were expecting. She watched as Marcus smoothly navigated Isabel towards a prominent table near the dance floor, a table that was clearly being held for them. Several influential city figures were seated there, including Councilman Davies and his wife People Marcus had been cultivating for months in relation to a new property development. They greeted Marcus warmly, their eyes flicking with polite curiosity towards Isabel, who accepted their introductions with poise and a radiant smile. She fit in seamlessly. Sophia felt a tremor run through her. He was introducing this woman in her dress to his important contacts. What did that signify? Was this a soft launch of a new partner? Was he planning to discard her, his pregnant wife, so easily? The need to confront him, to understand, to make him see the devastation he had wrought, warred with the instinct to flee, to escape the hundreds of pairs of eyes in this ballroom, to hide her shame. But where would she go? Back to their cold, empty apartment. The thought of being alone with this fresh agony was unbearable. No, she wouldn't run. Not this time. Slowly, deliberately, Sophia rose from her chair. Her legs felt unsteady like newborn stilts, but she forced them to move. Each step towards Marcus's table was an act of will. The emerald green of her rented dress suddenly felt garish, a beacon of her humiliation in a sea of bespoke elegance. She could feel eyes turning towards her, sensing a shift in the room's atmosphere, the subtle scent of drama. As she approached, she saw Patricia Ainsworth watching her with undisguised, avid interest from a nearby table. Patricia's earlier, insincere pleasantries now seemed like a prelude to this very moment. Marcus was in the middle of a sentence, gesturing animatedly when he finally looked up and saw her. For a fleeting second, genuine surprise flickered across his handsome features, quickly followed by a look of profound annoyance, then a carefully constructed mask of nonchalance. It was the look he used when an unwelcome interruption threatened to derail his plans. "Sophia," he said, his voice a little too loud, a little too jovial. "There you are. I was wondering where you'd got to." He didn't stand. He didn't introduce her to the table. Isabel Moreau turned her head, her smile faltering slightly, as she took in Sophia, her gaze sweeping down the rented green dress, and then, with dawning awareness, back to Sophia's face. There was a moment, a tiny fractional pause, where their eyes met. Did Isabel know? Did she know Sophia was Marcus's wife? Did she know the provenance of the magnificent Valentino gown she was wearing? Her expression was unreadable, a flicker of confusion perhaps, but no immediate guilt. The people at the table, including Councilman Davies, looked from Sophia to Marcus and then to Isabel, an awkward silence descending. Sophia's voice, when she finally spoke, was surprisingly steady, though low. "Marcus, may I have a word with you, please, in private?" Marcus waved a dismissive hand. "We're rather in the middle of something, Sophia. Can't it wait?" His eyes darted towards Councilman Davies, a silent apology for the interruption. "No, Marcus," Sophia said, her voice gaining a sliver of steel. "It cannot wait." She kept her gaze fixed on him, refusing to be intimidated, refusing to be dismissed like a recalcitrant child. She was his wife, the mother of his unborn child. She deserved at the very least this. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Isabel Moreau shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her earlier radiance dimming. She looked at Marcus, then at Sophia, a question in her eyes. Marcus let out an almost imperceptible sigh of irritation. He clearly wanted to shut her down, to tell her to go and sit quietly until he deigned to speak with her. But the unwavering intensity of Sophia's gaze and the sudden focused attention of everyone at their table and several surrounding ones made that impossible. A public scene was the last thing Marcus Thorne wanted, especially in front of people he was trying to impress. With a tight, forced smile, he finally rose. "Excuse me for a moment, he said to the table, his voice smooth as silk, betraying none of the fury Sophia knew was simmering beneath the surface. A small marital matter to attend to. He placed a reassuring hand on Isabel's shoulder, a gesture that felt like another twist of the knife in Sophia's heart. "I'll be right back." He turned to Sophia, his eyes now cold, hard chips of ice. "All right, Sophia, let's talk." He gestured curtly towards the ornate French doors leading to a quieter anteroom, away from the main ballroom. As Sophia walked ahead of him, she could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes on her back. The whispers had already started, she was sure. The rented dress, her obvious pregnancy, her husband, with another woman in a gown that screamed luxury. It was the kind of salacious gossip that would fuel conversations for weeks. The anteroom was dimly lit, furnished with plush velvet armchairs and heavy brocade curtains. It smelled faintly of old cigars and secrets. The moment the heavy doors closed behind them, muffling the sound of the Gala, Marcus's facade dropped. "What in God's name do you think you're doing, Sophia?" he hissed, his voice low and venomous. "Are you trying to embarrass me? Making a scene like that in front of Councilman Davies? Have you lost your mind?" Sophia turned to face him, her own carefully constructed composure beginning to crack. "Embarrass you," she choked out, her voice trembling with a toxic mix of rage and heartbreak. "You stand there with her in that dress, the dress you were supposed to buy for me, and you accuse me of causing embarrassment." Marcus had the audacity to look genuinely bewildered for a moment. "What are you talking about? What dress?" Then a flicker of recollection. "Oh, the Valentino. Yes, it's a stunning piece, isn't it? Isabel has exquisite taste." The casual cruelty of his words stole her breath. "Isabel has exquisite taste," Sophia repeated, her voice rising despite her efforts to control it. "Marcus, I showed you that dress. I told you I loved it. You said it was perfect, that you'd handle it." He waved his hand impatiently. "Details, details. I saw it. I liked it. I bought it. Isabel looks magnificent in it. You should be happy I have such a beautifully dressed companion. It reflects well on me." "She's your companion for the evening, Marcus. Is that what she is?" Sophia's heart was hammering against her ribs. "And what am I? Your pregnant wife, whom you couldn't even bother to ensure had something decent to wear. So I had to rent this cheap imitation." Her voice broke on the last words. Marcus stared at her, his expression hardening. "Don't be so melodramatic, Sophia. You're making a fool of yourself. It's just a dress, and frankly, that green thing you have on is perfectly adequate for your condition." "Adequate for my condition." The condescension in his tone was like a slap in the face. Tears welled in her eyes, hot and stinging. "This isn't about the dress, Marcus. It's about your lies. It's about your blatant disrespect, your cruelty." "My cruelty?" He let out a short, incredulous laugh. "I'm providing you with a lifestyle most women would kill for, a beautiful home, financial security. You wanted this baby. I'm here, aren't I? What more do you expect? I expect honesty, Sophia cried, the tears finally spilling over, tracing hot paths down her cheeks. I expect loyalty. I expect the man I married, not this monster who flaunts his mistress in my face in a dress he knew I adored. The word mistress hung in the air between them, heavy and ugly. Marcus's face darkened. You will lower your voice, Sophia, and you will not use that kind of language. Isabel Moreau is a business associate, a very important one. A business associate you buy Valentino gowns for, a business associate you escort to galas while your pregnant wife is left to fend for herself. Sophia's voice shook with the force of her emotion. Do you even hear yourself, Marcus? How stupid do you think I am? He took a step closer, his eyes narrowed. I think you're being hysterical and ungrateful, and I think you're about to ruin a very important evening for me if you don't pull yourself together and go back out there and act like a dignified wife. Dignified? Sophia laughed a raw, broken sound. How can I be dignified when you've stripped me of every last shred of it? She looked at him, at the handsome face she had once loved so desperately, now contorted with anger and indifference. The love she had clung to for so long felt like it was finally, irrevocably dying. This has to stop, Marcus, she whispered, a newfound resolve hardening her gaze despite the tears. This, whatever this is, it has to stop. Oh, it will stop, Sophia, Marcus said, his voice dangerously soft. It will stop when you learn your place. Now, are you going to go back out there and salvage what's left of this evening? Or are you going to continue this pathetic display? Sophia stared at him, the full weight of his callousness crushing her. There was no remorse in his eyes, no understanding, only annoyance, and a chillingly clear indication that she was to him an inconvenience. Her decision when it came was swift and certain, born from the ashes of her shattered heart. Sophia wiped her tears with the back of her hand, a gesture that was anything but dignified, yet felt utterly necessary. The emerald of her rented dress seemed to absorb the dim light of the anteroom, a stark contrast to the brilliance she knew Isabel was radiating in the Valentino. No, Marcus, she said, her voice surprisingly firm, the tremor gone. I'm not going back out there to play the part of the dignified wife in your charade. Not anymore. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Don't be foolish, Sophia. What do you think you're going to achieve with this defiance? You'll only make things worse for yourself. Worse? A bitter laugh escaped her. How much worse can they get, Marcus? My husband is parading his mistress in a dress meant for me at a public event while I'm pregnant with his child. He dismisses my pain, calls me hysterical, and demands I maintain a facade for his business associates. I think we've hit rock bottom, don't you? Before Marcus could retort, the heavy door to the anteroom creaked open. Isabel Moreau stood framed in the doorway, her expression a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. The midnight blue Valentino shimmered around her, a painful, beautiful reminder of Marcus's betrayal. Marcus, Isabel said, her voice soft, uncertain. Is everything all right? People are noticing. Marcus shot Sophia a look that could curdle milk, then turned to Isabel. His demeanor instantly smoothing, though the tension remained palpable. Everything is fine, Isabel. Just a slight misunderstanding. Sophia was just leaving. Sophia's eyes locked with Isabel's. There was something in the other woman's gaze, not malice perhaps, but a dawning comprehension. Did Isabel finally understand the full scope of the situation, that Sophia wasn't just some acquaintance, but the heavily pregnant wife of the man she was with? Leaving, Isabel looked at Sophia, then back at Marcus. But the gala? has barely begun. Sophia isn't feeling well, Marcus interjected smoothly, attempting to regain control. The pregnancy, you know. She needs to rest. He made a move as if to steer Sophia towards a side exit, but Sophia stood her ground. Actually, Sophia said, her voice clear and carrying, addressing Isabel directly, I was just explaining to Marcus how much I admired your dress. Isabel's eyes widened slightly. She instinctively touched the fabric of the Valentino gown. Oh, thank you. It's a beautiful design. It is, Sophia agreed, a dangerous calm settling over her. In fact, I picked it out myself. Marcus was supposed to buy it for me for this gala, as a surprise. She let the words hang in the air, watching for Isabel's reaction. Isabel's perfectly made-up face lost some of its color. Her gaze flickered from Sophia's very visible baby bump to Marcus, whose face was now a thundercloud. Marcus, she whispered, a note of accusation in her voice. Is this true? Marcus scoffed, trying to appear unruffled. Sophia is confused, Isabel. She's emotional. You know how it can be. He gestured vaguely at Sophia's stomach. Confused, Sophia's voice rose again, sharper this time. I am many things right now, Marcus. Heartbroken, furious, humiliated, but I am not confused. I remember every detail of that dress. I remember showing it to you. I remember you telling me it was perfect. Isabel took a hesitant step into the room, her eyes fixed on Marcus. You told me you picked it out specially for me, that it reminded you of my eyes. A small, mirthless smile touched Sophia's lips. He has a way with words, doesn't he? And apparently a very efficient way of recycling compliments along with gowns. The air in the small room was thick with unspoken accusations and dawning realizations. Isabel Moreau, for all her poise and confidence, now looked genuinely distressed. The magnificent Valentino seemed to weigh heavily on her. Marcus. Isabel pressed her voice, losing its earlier softness, replaced by a steely demand for truth. What is going on here? Who is she? Before Marcus could spin another lie, Sophia answered. I am Sophia Thorne. I am Marcus's wife, and I am carrying his child. She placed a hand protectively on her belly, her gaze unwavering. Isabel recoiled as if struck. She stared at Sophia's bump, then at Marcus, her face a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. His wife pregnant? Her voice was barely a whisper. You told me you were separated, that your divorce was almost finalized. You said she lived abroad. Sophia felt a sliver of grim satisfaction. So Marcus had constructed an entirely different narrative for Isabel. It wasn't just a casual affair. He had woven a complex web of lies to ensnare them both. Marcus, finally cornered, seemed to deflate. The arrogance in his posture sagged, replaced by a desperate, hunted look. Isabel, listen to me. It's complicated. Sophia, she has a tendency to exaggerate, to create drama. Create drama, Isabel's voice rose laced with fury. You lied to me, Marcus. You lied about everything. She looked down at the Valentino dress, a look of revulsion spreading across her face. This dress, you bought this for your wife. It doesn't matter who it was for initially, Marcus snapped, his composure finally shattering. I bought it. It looks good on you. What's the big deal? The big deal, Marcus, Sophia cut in, her voice cold, is that you are a liar and a cheat, and you've hurt 2 women tonight with your selfish games. Isabel was shaking her head, tears welling in her eyes. I can't believe this. I feel like such a fool. She looked at Sophia, a flicker of unexpected empathy in her gaze. He told me he painted such a different picture. Suddenly, a commotion was heard from the ballroom side of the door. A sharp rap, and then the door opened again, this time revealing Patricia Ainsworth, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of unfolding scandal. Behind her, several other curious faces craned their necks. "Is everything quite all right in here?" Patricia trilled, her gaze darting between Sophia, a visibly distressed Isabel, and a cornered Marcus. "We heard raised voices. One does worry." Her feigned concern was transparent. She was here for the drama, and it was reaching its crescendo. Marcus looked trapped. His carefully curated image was crumbling before his very eyes in front of the very people he sought to impress. Councilman Davies was visible just behind Patricia, his expression one of distinct disapproval. This was it. The public unraveling. Sophia took a deep breath. She could shrink away, let Patricia and the gossips have their field day, or she could own her truth, however painful. "Actually, Patricia," Sophia said, her voice carrying clearly into the now silent ballroom beyond the open door, "things are not quite all right, but perhaps it's time everyone understood why." She looked at Marcus, whose face was pale with fury and dawning panic. She looked at Isabel, who now seemed more victim than villain, duped by the same man. Then a new thought, a surprising twist, began to form in Sophia's mind. Marcus was a master manipulator, but manipulators often had weaknesses, vulnerabilities they fought hard to conceal. He prized his reputation, his image of success and control above all else. What if this public humiliation was just the beginning of his problems? As if on cue, a man Sophia vaguely recognized as one of Marcus's more aggressive business rivals, a Mr. Alistair Finch, appeared in the doorway behind Patricia. Finch had a predatory smile on his face as he surveyed the scene. He and Marcus had been locked in a bitter takeover battle for months. Finch's eyes met Sophia's for a brief moment, and there was a spark of something. Calculation, opportunity. Sophia suddenly remembered snippets of conversation Marcus had tried to keep quiet, hushed phone calls about leveraged assets, precarious loans, and the absolute necessity of securing the Davies development deal to stay afloat. Marcus wasn't just arrogant, he was potentially desperate. His empire might be built on shakier foundations than anyone knew. And Isabel Moreau, a very important business associate, Marcus had called her. What if her connection wasn't just social? Sophia turned to Isabel. "Ms. Moreau," she said, her tone surprisingly gentle. "My husband mentioned you are an important business associate. May I ask in what capacity?" Isabel, still reeling, looked at Sophia, then shot a venomous glare at Marcus. I work for my father, Jean-Luc Moreau, Moreau International Investments." Sophia's mind raced. Moreau International. They were one of the key potential investors in the very development deal Marcus was banking on, the deal Councilman Davies was pivotal for. Marcus hadn't just brought a mistress to the gala, he had brought the daughter of a crucial financial partner, dressed her in a gown meant for his wife, and lied to both of them. The sheer audacity, the recklessness, was breathtaking. The expression on Alistair Finch's face confirmed Sophia's suspicions. He looked like a shark that had just scented blood in the water. Councilman Davies, too, looked deeply unimpressed, his brow furrowed as he absorbed the implications of Isabel's identity and Marcus's deception. Marcus Thorne, the master of the universe, had just catastrophically overplayed his hand. The cracks in his facade weren't just showing, they were threatening to bring the whole edifice crashing down. And Sophia, in her rented emerald dress, found herself at the epicenter of it all, no longer just a victim, but a potential catalyst. The silence that followed Sophia's question and Isabel's reply was charged heavy with the unraveling of Marcus Thorne's meticulously crafted world. Isabel Moreau, daughter of Jean-Luc Moreau, whose company held significant financial sway, stared at Marcus with an expression of utter betrayal. The Valentino gown, once a symbol of glamour, now seemed like a costume in a particularly sordid play. Marcus, for his part, looked like a man watching his future dissolve. His face, usually so confident, was ashen. His eyes darted from Isabel to Councilman Davies, then to the smirking Alistair Finch, and finally, unwillingly, to Sophia. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, words failing him for perhaps the first time in his life. Patricia Ainsworth, never one to miss an opportunity to stir the pot, broke the silence. "Well, well, Marcus, it seems you have a penchant for complex business relationships." Her voice dripped with sarcasm. Councilman Davies cleared his throat, his stern gaze fixed on Marcus. "Mr. Thorne, I must say this situation is highly unorthodox and frankly deeply concerning. Moreau International is a respected firm. Transparency and integrity are paramount in the kind of city projects we are discussing." His disapproval was a palpable force. Alistair Finch stepped forward, a wolfish grin spreading across his face. "Indeed, Councilman. One has to wonder about the judgment of a man who conducts his affairs, both personal and professional, with such theatricality. It doesn't exactly inspire confidence in his stability or his financial acumen, does it?" This was a disaster for Marcus, unfolding in real time in front of the very people he needed to impress. Sophia watched a strange detachment settling over her. The raw pain was still there, a burning ache in her chest, but it was now mingled with a cold, clear understanding of the man she had married. He wasn't just a neglectful husband. He was a reckless gambler, willing to risk everything, his marriage, his reputation, potentially his company, on a foundation of lies. Isabel Moreau finally found her voice, and it was filled with ice. "Marcus, you used me. You lied to my face. You lied about your wife, about your life. You compromised my reputation and potentially my father's business by dragging me into this charade." She took a shaky breath, her eyes flashing. "The Valentino gown. You can consider its cost a very small down payment on the damage you've inflicted." She then looked at Sophia, a complex emotion in her eyes, a hint of apology, perhaps mixed with a shared sense of being wronged. "Mrs. Thorne, I am truly sorry for my part in this. I was deceived." Sophia nodded slowly. "I believe you, Ms. Moreau. It seems Marcus is an equal opportunity deceiver." Isabel then turned her attention back to Marcus, her voice ringing with finality. "As for any potential investment from Moreau International, I will be speaking to my father tonight. I cannot imagine he will be pleased to hear about your business ethics." With that, she turned on her heel, the magnificent Valentino swirling around her, and swept out of the anteroom, head held high, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. She didn't even glance back. The exit of Isabel Moreau was like a signal. Councilman Davies gave Marcus a curt, dismissive nod. "Mr. Thorne, I think it's best we postpone any further discussions indefinitely." He too turned and left his wife scurrying behind him. Alistair Finch lingered for a moment, savoring Marcus's downfall. "Tough break, Thorne," he said, not even bothering to hide his glee. "Looks like your house of cards is about to come tumbling down. I'll be watching with interest." He winked at Sophia, a gesture she found unsettling but also strangely empowering. Then he too departed, presumably to spread the news of Marcus's spectacular implosion. Patricia Ainsworth, her eyes wide with the sheer deliciousness of the scandal, finally backed away, eager to share the juicy details with the remaining gala guests. The open doorway to the ballroom now seemed like a portal to Marcus's public execution. Suddenly, Marcus and Sophia were alone in the anteroom, the echoes of the departed crowd fading. The grand setting of the Ritz-Carlton felt less like a palace of luxury and more like the scene of a devastating train wreck. Marcus sank into one of the velvet armchairs, his body slumping as if the strings holding him upright had been cut. He looked defeated, stripped bare. The fight was gone from him, replaced by a dawning, terrifying understanding of the consequences of his actions. "You," he finally whispered, looking up at Sophia, his eyes filled with a mixture of rage and despair. "You did this. You ruined everything." Sophia felt a flicker of her old self, the part of her that might have felt guilty, that might have tried to comfort him. But it was quickly extinguished by the memory of his cruelty, his dismissiveness, the sight of Isabel in that blue dress. "No, Marcus," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "You did this to yourself. All I did was stop pretending. I stopped enabling your lies." She gestured to her rented emerald dress. "This dress, this cheap rental, is more honest than anything you've shown me in years." He stared at her, speechless. "I'm leaving, Marcus." Sophia continued, the words coming more easily now. "I'm not going back to that empty apartment with you. I'm not going to be your prop, your alibi, or your punching bag anymore. Leaving." He looked genuinely shocked, as if the thought had never occurred to him. "Where will you go? What will you do? You have nothing without me." His words, meant to wound, to assert his control, barely registered as an insult anymore. Sophia had faced public humiliation tonight, but in doing so, she had found a strength she didn't know she possessed. "I have myself, Marcus, and I have our child." She placed her hand on her belly. "And that's more than enough to start over. I'll find a way. Perhaps Mrs. Albright from Borrowed Elegance knows a good lawyer." The thought was empowering. Marcus looked panicked now. "Sophia, wait. We can talk about this. Don't be hasty. Think about the baby." "I am thinking about the baby, Marcus," she replied. "I'm thinking about the kind of life I want for him or her. A life built on truth, not on your lies and manipulations. A life where they are cherished, not used as a pawn." She walked towards the door, not the side exit he had tried to shuffle her through earlier, but the main doors leading back into the now buzzing ballroom. Let them stare, let them whisper. She had nothing left to hide. As she reached the threshold, she paused and looked back at him, a crumpled figure in a designer tuxedo, his empire crumbling around him. For a moment she felt a pang of something that might have been pity, but it was fleeting. He had made his choices. Now she was making hers. "Goodbye, Marcus," she said softly. "I hope for your sake you learn something from this, but honestly, I doubt you will." And with that, Sophia Thorne, in her rented emerald green dress, walked out of the anteroom and into the brilliantly lit ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton. The whispers followed her, of course, and curious eyes tracked her every move. But for the first time, in a very long time, she didn't feel shame. She felt a profound, if terrifying, sense of freedom. She didn't know what the future held. She knew there would be lawyers' arguments and the difficult process of disentangling her life from his. But as she walked towards the main exit of the hotel, her head held high, she carried with her the knowledge that she had survived the worst of it. She had faced her husband's ultimate betrayal and had not broken. Outside, the city lights seemed brighter, no longer blurred by unshed tears. She hailed a taxi, the simple act feeling like a significant step towards her new life. As the cab pulled away from the opulent facade of the Ritz-Carlton, Sophia allowed herself a small, tired smile. The Valentino gown was a painful memory, but the rented emerald dress that would be her symbol of liberation. The night had started as a nightmare, but it was ending with the undeniable dawn of her own strength. The battle was far from over, but Sophia knew with a certainty that settled deep in her bones that she was going to be all right. More than all right. She was going to build a life worthy of herself and her child. Marcus Thorne had underestimated her for the last time. And so Sophia walked away, not just from a gala, but from a life built on lies. The rented dress, once a symbol of her secret shame, became her armor. Marcus's empire of deceit began to crumble, all because one woman dared to speak her truth in the face of devastating betrayal. But is this the end for Marcus? And what new challenges and triumphs await Sophia as she prepares to welcome her child into a world she's determined to make better? If Sophia's story of resilience and courage resonated with you, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe for more gripping dramas and empowering stories. What do you think Sophia should do next? Let us know in the comments below. We value your support more than any designer gown.